Most people who are harassed or assaulted don't report it. That means that bad behavior continues, and in many cases, it escalates. That's why we need to shatter the silence. Our next speaker is someone who did just that. Stephanie is a graduate from Coldwater High School. Steph credits a presentation from her freshman phys ed class with saving her life. The speaker was a certified, trained sexual assault nurse examiner or a SANE nurse from the Coldwater Hospital. Just a few days into summer vacation between her freshman and sophomore year, Stephanie was raped and threatened to be killed if she told anyone. As a result of the information she received during that phys ed class, Steph knew what to do and what not to do to stay alive. She had learned that the crime scene was more than the location of where the rape happened, that her body was in fact a crime scene, and that she needed to protect the evidence on her. When the nurse at Coldwater Hospital started to describe the rape kit, Steph said, "I already know about it. I learned about it in phys ed class, and you were my instructor." That's right, she was the very same nurse. Because Steph reported the rape so quickly, the Michigan State Police were able to interview some of her neighbors before they went off to work. A neighbor who also happened to be a Coldwater High School student had seen a suspicious car in the neighborhood and was able to provide a license plate number to the police. Within hours, the police were face to face with the owner of the car, who was later confirmed by DNA as the rapist. Steph wanted to go to trial. She wanted to make sure this man would not do this to another person ever again. He is now serving a minimum of 33 years and up to 55 years in prison. Let's listen to what Stephanie has to say.
All right, so my name's Stephanie, and I grew up here in Coldwater, Michigan. When I was a freshman going through Coldwater High School, I was able to partake in a sexual assault class slash self-defense class where we had a nurse from the hospital come in and talk to us about if something ever did happen to us, what the process would be once we came to see her, if we came to see her, which kind of gave me a leg up for what was to happen to me later on that year. So in between the summer between my freshman year and my sophomore year, we were a couple days into summer vacation. My parents had gone to bed for the night, and I decided that I wanted to go out to my car to get a CD, and in between, my house and getting to my car, someone grabbed me from behind and started taking me down towards our lake in the front of our house. I just tried to struggle to get away. I managed to get myself free for a couple of seconds and fell to the ground. But he was instantly right on top of me again, covering up my mouth and saying that if I screamed, that my parents would find me floating in the lake the next day. So to get through the situation, I kind of just complied with what he was asking me to do, to try and keep myself alive as long as I could, to try and either find a way out of the situation or to just get through it until he left. So he took me down by the lake, where he proceeded to rape me 3 different ways, orally, digitally, and then sexually, where he actually had intercourse with me. When he was through, he took me down 3 or 4 more yards away from my house. I don't know why, if it was just to confuse me. So I didn't know what direction he walked off in or why he really did it. But he had me curl up on the ground and count to 100. And he said once I got to 100 that I could go back home. So I did what he wanted me to do, just to try and keep myself alive. So I curled up on the ground and I counted to 100, and then I went back into my house. I didn't go to my parents right away. I wasn't sure that they would believe what had happened to me. We lived in such a place where you wouldn't think that could happen. We didn't have a whole lot of neighbors around us. So I honestly just waited for my older sister to get home that evening before I told anybody what happened. So I went to my sister first. She didn't believe me at first until she took a look at my feet and realized that I had grass clippings on my feet that didn't come from our yard. She pleaded with me to be able to tell our parents what had happened, and after a little while, I let her go and get my mom up. Mom didn't believe it at first either until Christy said, "Look at her feet." Thankfully, my sister had a friend who worked at the Coldwater Police Department who we called before we took any action leaving our house. He informed us that the Coldwater station was not the one that we needed to go to, that we actually needed to go to the Michigan State Police to report what had happened. So we called them and informed them that we were coming down because I was terrified to leave my house or have any cop cars come down our street, as the guy who raped me told me that he had friends on the police force and he would be watching the neighborhood and he would know if I went and told anybody that this had happened. So we were just extra cautious with how we handled things until we got down to the police station. The state troopers were absolutely amazing. They were kind. So once we got down to the station, they separated my mom and I in one interview room and took my dad into a second one because they didn't know. They didn't know if my dad was the perpetrator at that time or if it was somebody in our family. We didn't know either. So they were just doing their job, and my family totally understood that. And right away it became apparent that my dad had nothing to do with it. So they interviewed me for a good hour or so, and then we went down to the Coldwater Hospital to have a rape kit done, where I got to meet up with the lady who taught my defense class earlier that year. So that was a little bit of a comfort. Because we reported everything so fast, they were able to canvass our neighborhood for any kind of witnesses. They were able to track down a few people before they went to work who had some really good information that gave them some really good leads. Luckily, a friend of mine who lived down the road had noticed a suspicious car at the front of our neighborhood when he came home that evening and just happened to write down the license plate number. So within 6 or 7 hours of us reporting this, they were in front of this random guy that wasn't from our area. So they ended up getting a warrant and taking him also to have a kit done. And Michigan State Police escorted that kit up to Lansing themselves to make sure that it got processed as soon as possible so that we could keep moving forward and get this guy off the streets. So once the kits came back, they did find my DNA on him. So we went through the trial process of a pre-trial, making sure that there was enough evidence to move forward with an actual trial. By Christmas that year, we had gone through the entire trial and we got better than a life sentence from our judge, which was amazing. 33 to 55 years is a pretty long time for somebody to sit in jail and have to think about what they've done to another person. So after I got through the trial and everything that came along with it, I thought that there was, something that I could do to try and make a difference, like Nurse Topaz was able to do for me when she came in and taught in our gym class. So I went back to school and actually approached the teacher who set up that program to begin with, and told her that I thought that I could be a good asset to her. When I had that class, I was the kid sitting at the back going, this is never going to happen to me. Why am I even listening to this? But the sad truth is that it's 1 in 3, and not, excuse me, and not 1 in 3 women. 1 in 3 people will go through this in their lifetime. So I went back and asked the teacher if I could be a part of her group and could talk to the freshman classes coming in to take this class. And she thankfully let me come on. It was a big step in healing for me, being able to tell my story and to try and heal my family at the same time. Eventually, I would end up getting my sister and my mom speaking about this as well, which they still are big advocates to this day, trying to make a difference. So for the last 3 years that I was in high school, and I continued once I went to college to come back anytime I was asked to speak about these issues, because if we can help one person, change one person's life, let one person know that they're not alone, that it was totally worth it. I've had lots of people commend me for coming forward. On the other hand, there's victim shaming that comes along with it as well. I was 16 years old. I didn't weigh more than 125 pounds soaking wet. He could throw me around like a rag doll with one arm. It's what I had to do to survive, and that's what I try and tell people. It's not about fighting back. If you feel like you can't fight back because it's just going to put you in greater risk of losing your life, you do what you need to do to survive, to get through that situation. Going back to school was interesting. My name was released into the papers, so everybody was pretty well aware that this had happened to me, as well as a couple of my high school teachers being called for jury duty for our case that had to be dismissed because they couldn't look at me or my sister as anything else but their daughter. But with that comes along the normal discussions that go through teenhood. I can remember going through government class, and everybody has the discussion about abortion and the pros and cons, and that always stirred up a lot of feelings for me. Thankfully, I did not get pregnant from being raped. I don't think I would have been a strong enough person to be able to carry a child full term after that. Going to high school parties later on and watching people putting themselves in precarious situations by getting overly intoxicated or doing drugs. I always became the mother hen over most of my friends whenever we would go to parties, being sober mom, and making sure that everyone was safe and that everyone would make it home at the end of the night. I can tell you that a lot of people will tell you that time will heal all wounds. I don't know so much about completely healing as they get lesser over time. The more my family stayed active and talked about these kind of things, the more we felt we healed. Counseling is always a great idea. Never settle for a counselor. Find someone who you feel comfortable with. And it doesn't have to be, someone with a degree. Talking to my teachers was a great help. I had an amazing support system going through school. I almost didn't make it through high school. There were times where I was absent from school more than I was present. But having a couple good teachers by my side kept me going, kept me coming back, even when it was hard to face the kids around you. There's always people who are going to talk behind your back, say that you deserved it, say that you were asking for it. All I can say about the people who want to talk things about you behind your back is they don't know what it's like. They'll never know until it happens to them or till it happens to somebody that's close to them, what it can do to a family, to your friends. It didn't impact just me and my mom and dad and my sister. This impacted my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, my family who don't even live in state, who are all the way out in California. It was hard for everybody, and it brought up old memories for everybody, old wounds that other family members hadn't healed from. So we have to shatter the silence. And the only way that we're going to do this is if we stop hiding in the shadows and feeling like this was our fault in some way. The only way we're going to stop people from continuing to do this and get away with this is giving ourselves a voice and giving a voice for those around us who can't speak up for themselves. If someone comes to you and wants to tell you their story because they feel like they have no one else that they can talk to, please just listen. Try not to be judgmental. You don't know what this feels like until it happens to you or till it happens to someone that you know.